I love to talk about how do we actually make our business better actually by investing in our frontline teams. There's a lot of talk, and I just talked with today's guest about that before we went live, that how do we actually, become better by investing in our people, not just in technology or a new marketing campaign, but actually how do we actually sell more as a business by investing in our people? And that's what we're going to be talking about that. And, how do we actually build what you call a people first culture, with the show actually all started out about how do we actually get more insights into what are these Maverick leaders know and do. And today we have a guest that has seen a lot of different hospitality businesses and helped them boost their performance on sales through their frontline people. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Michael. It's great to be here.
Tell me a bit about your journey and background and what that led you to set up a business that helps hospitality businesses boost frontline employee performance.
Thanks for the question. I had probably a fairly non-traditional pathway. I started out like everyone working menial jobs and stuff, but I didn't go to college. I didn't have any higher education. I ended up working in a hotel in Florida and worked my way up from valet to bellman to front desk. And when I got to front desk, they told me, if you sell an upgrade or you sell a walk-in, you can make a commission. So I got very good at that very quickly and like doubled my income. I made so much money doing that they promoted me because I was making more than the managers. So I got promoted to the night audit manager, which was great and learned a lot. It's amazing being the overnight manager at a beach resort. You get to see a lot of interesting things. And then I kind of leapfrogged. I leapfrogged my boss and became the assistant front office manager, then the front office manager. And then lucky, the director of guest services left abruptly and they gave me that job. And then that person who left called me about 8 months later and said, I'd have a startup that needs someone. And so I got recruited to join the startup called zerochaos.com in 2000. And not a great time to join a .com. The bubble popped about 4 months later, but we managed to survive and over 11 years grew from, a startup to hundreds of millions of dollars of value. And we sold the company. And then I met Ziad, who had started Frontline Performance Group, FPG. And I had spent 11 years trying to help companies save money through procurement process. That's what ZeroCast did, is it kind of did vendor management. And instead joined FPG where we were helping companies make money. So it was very exciting to me to be much more interesting to talk about making money than saving money. And they didn't do any work in hospitality, and I had that background. So that became my mission, is to open a new vertical, and that vertical was hotels. And interestingly, we didn't actually get hotels first. We got theme parks first, which led us to hotels, which is an interesting story if you want to hear.
And it's purely hotels you work with in hospitality, or you mentioned theme parks as well, but today it is primarily hotels, or is it other operators as well?
It's primarily hotels. There is a little bit of theme park in there. At one point, we worked with a lot of theme parks, but there's only so many. There's only like 8 or 10 really big ones in the world, and we worked with most of them. But hotels is our strategic focus. It's 80% of our business right now and growing. And hotels are interesting because they actually represent more than one industry. Right now, we're launching into food and beverage in a big way, but inside the hotel. So the front desk is where we spent most of our time historically. But now we're starting to branch off into food and beverage, which is the other big pillar of, what we call in-stay revenue generation in a hotel. It's the front desk and it's food and beverage operations.
And what is exactly the that your model is? So how do you actually solve pain for the operator?
Yeah, well, we're singularly focused on the front line, and so historically, it's any position where there's a person interacting with the guest or customer directly, whether it be across the counter or on the phone. And so we spent 25 years working with frontline employees and frontline leaders to create the right environment and the right culture that would inspire these hourly employees to better engage the guest. And then once you have them engaged, then you train them on the techniques of how do you, what is the art of transaction sales? How do you increase conversion and all those kinds of things? So we've done that. We did that for 25 years. And then we started building technology that would enable managers to do that better, and moved away from consulting, where we were going and kind of holding their hands through it. And then when COVID hit, we weren't allowed to go on site at clients. So we flipped the model completely to, being a SaaS delivery model. The platform now has all of the tools that we were using as consultants to drive engagement with frontline employees. Things like, incentives and goals and recognition and all the things that make an hourly employee feel engaged. And then all the training is digital now, so they can, all the techniques that you could ever need to be able to properly sell is in there. So the pain the pain we're providing a solution for is, particularly in hotels, the guest has booked to stay. They've committed a certain amount of revenue. How do you make that revenue number go up? Well, the way you do it is when they arrive, you engage them in the appropriate way, a service-focused way, and you get them to buy an enhancement to what they already booked, whether it be a better room, whether it be a spa experience, or whatever it is that's available for the front desk to sell. And by doing that, you're increasing the guest engagement in your property, their experience is improved, and you're increasing revenue. So it's the most profitable revenue you can get because it's 80% flow through. And you're engaging your guests in a way that increases loyalty and satisfaction. So it's really like a multi-win. The guest wins, they have a better experience. The hotel wins, the frontline employee wins because they earn commission. We win because we get more business. So everyone wins. It's a very positive cycle kind of model that we operate in.
And it's super interesting because Hospitality Maverick podcast was spinned out of a consultancy as well, and that consultancy will build on a model they call the service profit chain, and that's in principle we just told there. Take care of your people, they take care of your customers, then sales will come, and you compound on loyal customers. So sales is not coming just from customers in general. It's not just a transaction. It's you're building loyalty because it's a service business, and it's so important because, as you say, they already decided they're going to go and spend a certain amount of money, if it's in the restaurant, it's in the hotel room, whatever it is. But how do you actually get them to spend more money? And actually, after our pre-talk, I went to a hotel in Copenhagen, actually, where I stayed at Citizen M Hotels. It's a small hotel group. And you could see after we talked, I was a bit more aware about, but they were doing exactly what we talked about in that call. There, you came in, you already booked at a hotel room. There's in the middle, upper middle. And then they are trying to figure out, is there other things you need? So they were actually actively trying to sell me the things, but not like putting them down my throat, but actually suggesting things, which is really interesting. Oh, is it your first time in Copenhagen? No, I'm Danish, so I know Copenhagen really well. So you see, they were like trying to find different ways. Do you need something in the morning? Do you need your breakfast? You haven't ordered breakfast. Do you need breakfast to have a good start today? And all those things. And you can see those, and people that know Citizen M, probably more UK and Europe based, would know they're very strong on their culture, and you can feel their culture through their people. They're very attentive staff when you come in. But that's different. So just again confirmed that the service profit chain, which is a very, very old model from the 70s, already tell us many of the things we should do today, actually to create more raving fans. And it starts with actually make work and give people the tools they need to do a job well done.
That's exactly right. Yeah. We always say what we're teaching is common sense, but we're making it commonplace. Anyone who grew up in hotels understands the principles of service and the principles of revenue. It's getting the new people that are coming in, which tend to be in the front line, to understand the nuances of service, the importance of service. And how do you use service to generate more revenue? By recommending, by advising, by educating, never by asking and selling. It's icky when you go somewhere and they start selling you something. It's not icky when they say, is this your first time in Copenhagen? Yes, it is. Well, then these are some things you're really going to enjoy. Let's make sure you can see the water from your room or whatever it is. That's not selling. That's actually caring for and serving your customers. We had a front desk agent at a hotel, an iconic hotel in New York City, one of the first ones we ever worked with. He had been there for 40 years at the front desk. And when we launched the property, he came up to our person afterward and said, I have been doing my guests a disservice for 40 years. And he became the number one seller in the property. And he wasn't selling anything. He thought sales was evil and bad. And once he understood that guests arriving don't know what you know, as a front desk agent, you know all the best rooms, you know all the best views, you know what people like and don't like. And if you don't share that with them when they arrive, then you're not serving them. But the flip side of that is when you are doing it right, you're getting more money for it because people will pay for a better experience. I mean, all the studies show the more you pay for something, you tend to enjoy it more. And not just because it costs more, but because it's better. It's, you know, a better experience.
And that goes for everything in life. And that's really, really interesting as well when you talk often about, you know, price strategy and where you want to put yourself in the competitive matrix. Because sometimes people believe that you need to give a discount to win, but actually what you need is actually to raise your standards because that people want to pay for that.
You're exactly right.
What is this like? If you talk us through a typical, you know, use case of a client, the work you do with them, and I know it's different now, as you said, you've gone more digital. But talk a bit about like where are the client when you come in, and you know, what is the gap and what is a great example of how you actually start closing that gap and actually create some impact in the business that's really measurable on sales or customer experience?
Yeah, so now we encounter a hotel or a hotel group that isn't working with us. They tend to do everything manually when it comes to front desk upselling. There's really no other technology out there that's exactly like ours. So they're tracking it manually. They're doing it manually. It's, you know, they may or may not have an incentive. The front desk agents, it's basically completely optional. They can do it or not. Well, usually be one or two people that do it. No one else does. So when we come in, we get everyone loaded onto the system and we put them through a launch training. It's virtual training, but it's actually instructor-led, where we basically share with them the impact they can have. And we also give them a very clear view into how much money they can make. It's important for them to understand that, you know, doing one sale a day could pay you your car payment. You know, this could be a legitimate material amount of money for you as an individual. And when we get them excited, they tend to start trying. And then we put them into the digital coursework that just builds. They're short videos, but these courses build over time. And you can go from understanding the importance of eye contact all the way to the nuances of, you know, dialogue, how to construct dialogue. We also put the manager through training. We call it champion certification. And we took basically, I mean, let me back up. This might be interesting. So before COVID, we were actually sending consultants into hotel properties to work side by side on a recurring basis. It might have been a few days a month. In some cases, they worked there full time. And so we had this training program for our people that would prepare them to go into the client environments. Well, we took all of that training and created the champion certification. So we're basically turning over all of our IP to the property or to the manager to build them up so that they're better at coaching, they're better at inspiring people, they know how to lead through trust, you know, all the things that we were teaching our consultants. So when we launch, we begin the certification for the champion, we get them into the training, we get the frontline employees pretty fired up. And then when they're looking in the system, they actually see themselves ranked. They know how they're doing. They can track their incentives, their issued goals. They receive recognition through the platform. And it becomes a very a self-fulfilling kind of prophecy, what they call the Pygmalion effect. The more attention you give, the more people perform. So that's what we're after, just building a positive feedback loop and getting the agents to start earning more money. And once you earn more money, you don't want to give it up, you know, so it becomes, again, a very positive cycle. And they should properties see results in the first week. I mean, the first day after we launch it, they'll sometimes see a spike of performance.
So I guess that the consultant that works with you now can make much bigger impact working through the platform that way. And actually, you know, the the customer group they can serve is much bigger because, you
It's
don't have to
exponential.
travel, you don't need to be there, and actually you can actually draw much quicker experience across different clients.
Exactly. Pre-COVID, our average consultant probably had 4 or 5 hotels that they supported. Now it's more like 80
Wow.
or 100. So it's exponential amount of influence over how much they can support. And because we're giving a much more knowledge to the champions, it's actually a higher sustainability of performance because the managers are there. Whereas it used to be we'd come in 4 or 5 days a month and you'd see the results spike and then they would decline and they'd spike.
Yeah.
Well, now it's up all the time because the managers aren't leaving.
Yeah, and also I guess they are then forced to be involved from day one, and they own it on the property, and it's not the consultant that's standing next to them, because that's the typical consultant issue, is that you come in, you fix something, and it works really well while you're there, and then you leave, and the whole thing collapses because there's no ownership on the
That's exactly
process.
it. It's like a heartbeat, that you see the results go up because we were going back all the time. So it was a heartbeat. Now it's more like a steady climb. And we're turning it over to them. We're also, we tell our clients, we're institutionalizing our specialty into your company. So we're making your leadership stronger. We're building your frontline team to be at a higher capacity. They're more now ready for leadership if they want to stay in hospitality. It's a whole nother level of competence at the front line. And there's a lot of revenue at stake. I mean, at a portfolio level, a group that has 100 hotels, it's going to be in the tens of millions of dollars a year of high margin revenue.
And what do you typically see of, like, if you take from a KPI point of view, you go in, you run the process, you improve the leadership capabilities and the employee capabilities. What do you see of typical outcomes that will happen? Let's talk within 6 to 12 months. What typical happens there?
Oh, you could see RevPAR improvement of north of 2%, but often 4, 5, 6, 7%, depending on the type of hotel, which is a material amount of revenue. It's equivalent to like opening a restaurant on the property.
Yeah.
That's how much you can generate from a bottom line standpoint. And you'll see, oftentimes they're not doing anything or very little. So you could see, 8, 9, 10x on the actual dollars that are being generated. We might go in and they're doing $5,000 a month, and 12 months later they're doing $60,000 a month.
Yeah.
So it's not immaterial. And even in small upper mid-scale properties that, historically, since we've been in the market now 14 years or whatever, we constantly hear there's nothing to sell, there's nothing to sell. There is something to sell. There's always something to sell. But we see these, 110, 130 room upper mid-scales doing $7, $8 grand a month. Well, that could double their EBITDA, at a property like that. And so when you're at scale and you own or manage hundreds of these things, it becomes a very material aggregated number. But for the general manager at that property, that could be the difference between your bonus or not.
Yeah.
And they just typically, we have something we call limiting beliefs. A lot of times it's just a limiting belief that there's nothing to sell. But I'll give you a real example. And you travel for business, I'm sure. You come into a hotel, your meeting the next day is at 11 in the morning, your flight's at 4:30 or 5.
Yeah.
And you have to check out and take your bag to the meeting, blah, blah, blah. Well, if the front desk agent said, what time is your flight? And you say 4:30. And you say, well, when's your meeting? 1 o'clock. We need to get you a late checkout so you can come back, change, freshen up before you go to the airport. Take your bag to the meeting. It's all at $40. That is a service. You're providing a service. Instead of them lugging their bag and then they're up all day and in their suit and they want to change it. It is a service. And every hotel in the world, particularly upper mid-scales, which tend to be business travelers or whatever, they can offer that. It is very easy. You only have to sell a few of those a day to make a real difference at the property.
So it's also understanding how you actually package things for your people to sell, because actually I see often that, people want more sales, but they don't give people the tools or the concept. What do I want them to sell, and how should they prioritize to sell? Because you can't just hire people and say, go and sell some more, or you should be selling up more. But if they don't know exactly how to sell that product, I guess that's also what you help. It's really putting that together.
You hit the nail on the head. everyone wants more revenue, but oftentimes they don't know how. And so it's not rocket science, but it does take a deliberate focus. And that's what we help bring is, things like a late checkout or things like an adjoining room or in a resort. I mean, views and suites and all kinds of stuff. You could tell your front desk, go sell more of this. Well, then the person that you hired probably ever worked in sales. They don't know what you mean by sell more of this. They don't want to ask and get rejected. People are fragile. They don't want to have to put themselves out there. So you have to make it easy for them to transact it. And then you have to make it easy for them to try it. And the best way is to make sure they understand all you're doing is educating the guest on what is available for them that will enhance their experience. You're not asking them, they're not going to say no because you're not asking them a direct question. You're just saying, because you've never been at our hotel before, there's this amazing view of the water. It's only $70 more a night. Your wife is going to love it. You can sit on the balcony at night and watch the sunset. That's what we teach them to do. That is not hard to do. And it's a lot easier to do that than to say, do you want a suite? Because then they're going to be like, no, I don't want a suite. Why are you asking me that? But if you tell me my wife is going to be able to watch the sunset on the balcony, that sounds pretty compelling.
When you go in and work with clients, what is it like the typical things you see has the biggest, impact over time as you work with them? Of course, there's some ways to ask people, eye contact and all that, but like, where's the biggest, where is the real gold mine in this when you work with it consistently?
Yeah, the biggest gold mine is getting the entire department engaged. It's often, the 80-20 rule, 20% of the employees are doing 80% of the revenue, but we have environments where it has become part of front desk culture. If you're hired to work at that front desk, they expect you to be selling at a high level, and they're able to hire higher level people because the incentive pay is so high. I mean, in these kinds of properties, you're talking, some of them we've been with for 8 or 9 years, and they're still breaking records every year. They're getting better and better, and their front desk agents are making $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year because they're selling so much, and it becomes a cultural expectation that you're great at this. So the gold mine is building toward that culture and getting the general manager and getting the, in larger hotels, the rooms division exec, with the division, the director of front office, to believe that this could be a very material revenue stream for the hotel. And it can be a lot of fun because you could also, for front desk agents that make that kind of money, their job is pretty fun. It's not fun when you make $9 an hour and you get yelled at all day, but if you're making $30 an hour, it's pretty fun. And you also now have a pool of people you can recruit into your corporate sales, into your banquet sales, because they're professional. So it's really, for us, it's not so much there's a product that makes it work best. It's a culture that makes it work best.
And that's quite interesting. So it's really when you, of course, have the right beliefs, as you talked about. Again, you need to have the right beliefs, believe in it, invest in it, but actually also when you invest in principal leadership capabilities, exactly often is when people talk about, improving their business, they talk about a new brand, a new concept that really is going to take us into the new era of what we're going to do. But it's actually, you need actually to turn that around and say, actually, if we actually want to grow the business, it's not about a design job per se. That's great if it's there, because then it's more beautiful, it's easier to sell, but it's actually lifting the capabilities of all people, from the frontline desk workers to the general managers, leadership competencies over time. 1%, 1%, 1%. Boom. Yeah.
Correct. Yes. And when the idea of being more productive, there's a concept we like called discretionary effort. So it is the difference between an employee doing enough for you never to fire them, or doing everything they can do. And that difference is completely at their discretion. You can't make them do it. You can make them do the minimum. You can't make them do more. Nope. So how do you unlock that desire to give more? Well, that's where leadership and culture becomes critical. And from our perspective, it all starts with trust. Is leaders that can foster trust with their teams, and their team feels that trust, and you could even say love, but feels that trust coming from their leaders, they're going to reciprocate that. And you're going to elevate the productivity of the entire team because now they're going to rally around the leader. And it's funny, we've done leadership training for decades. And I often hear, we go in and we talk about principles of leadership and how to do culture. And all the leaders are sitting there like, I am so busy. How am I ever going to give more time to my staff? And I always say, here's the irony. The better you get at this, the more time you'll have because they'll pick up more work from you. You won't have to clean up every little thing because when that happens, when your employees are constantly raising their hand and saying, I need help with this, I need help with this, they can do it. They're just thinking, this isn't my job. The manager's going to do it. When you foster that kind of trusting, loving culture between you, they're going to be thinking, I don't want to put this on my manager. They're busy. I want to help them. That can be a 20, 30, 40% productivity swing just in how you treat the people that you're serving. And I always ask managers, do you allow your employees to critique you? Are they comfortable telling you when you're doing something wrong? If the answer is no, then you're not there yet. You got a lot of work to do.
And that's super interesting because I had a similar conversation with somebody a couple of weeks ago. And he asked me the question, how do we actually build trust in an organization? Because as the CEO, how do we actually make people trust that we're doing the right thing? And what is your take on that? From the experience you've had with all these hotels, all these managers, how do we actually go in systematically? Because you can be aware as a CEO that you have a trust issue because people are not coming and telling you, and they only come and tell you when they get really, frustrated. That's when there's an issue with a manager below you that has not done their job well. So then they go to the CEO. They take that chance. They could be fired or not. They don't care anymore. They're so frustrated, and you might lose great talent. But how do you actually start building that systematically into your business? Because trust is we all have an understanding what it is, but how do we actually build it, and how do we actually make it real?
Yeah. So from my perspective, and from I think FPG, I think we have a pretty good culture. We do everything we can to foster trust. You're never perfect and things still happen, but basically it's this. The managers have to give trust first. They have to demonstrate that they trust their team and their employees all the way down to the front line. Because if you don't trust, if you're a manager who has the mindset, and this is a classic position that people take, you have to earn my trust. Trust is earned. You hear that all the time. And I think that is completely wrong. I think when you say to someone, you have to earn my trust, what you are telling them is, I do not trust you. And if someone didn't say you have to earn my trust, if they came up and said, Michael, I don't trust you, you're immediately on the defensive, and you're subconsciously, you are not going to make yourself vulnerable to that person because they don't trust you. Why should you trust them? Conversely, if you say to someone, I trust you, you have my trust. Now it's yours to keep it. Completely different scenario. And then when they bring you something, you treat them with respect. You hear them. You say, I appreciate you bringing this to me. How can we fix this together? Those kinds of behavior. It's all just the managers knowing that my job is to give trust and reinforce trust in every interaction with these employees. Even if the employee is doing a really poor job, there is no reason ever to break trust. Because the other thing about trust is, if you have mutual trust, you can be honest with each other, and you can say to an employee, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but we've given you every opportunity to improve. I've worked with you. This isn't working out. They're going to trust that that's coming from a genuine place. They're not going to look at you like you're a monster. But if they don't trust you, they're going to think you're just hateful and evil and you're hurting my feelings. So to answer your question, managers have to own the fact that trust is on them, not on the employee. And even if your manager above you is not treating you that way, don't use that as an excuse to treat the people you manage poorly. Do it right, treat them right, build trust, and you will rise in the organization because your team will be more productive.
And it's super interesting because one of the things I said was that I said, of course, you need to give trust first and actually fix the low-hanging problems there is. And that could be from everything from, things that doesn't work in their day-to-day work, a computer that's slow, whatever it is, just go in and fix it very quickly. do those things that just give sense to fix, but has not come to you or have not been sorted out because you didn't want to invest in that, but actually it cost you more money over a month than giving them a new computer that's slow, or a tool that doesn't work, a knife that's is not sharp, and so on. So actually start there and show that you are willing to invest. And then, as you say, it's also about becoming very, invest in some training or something where people can see your interest in making them better. And that's where trust starts to go. That's phase 2 in my world.
Yeah,
Make
I agree
work and then invest in their capabilities, because you want to make them better than when they arrived at you. And if they can feel they're getting better and better, and I spent a big part of, everybody knows my career with McDonald's, and that was exactly, I had really good leaders, but also they put more in me than I, felt I was giving, because I was learning. I was always getting an extra dimension on my leadership capabilities. And you're never done with that, the leadership capability.
You're never done with that.
But if you feel that you always are being stretched upwards, then there's a bigger chance you stay, and your results also becomes better because you know the business better, and the level of trust. And I think that's the two critical phases. And then there's all the other compensation and benefits, of course, important, pay on right time, and all these, hygiene factors. But actually, from a manager's point of view, that's really where your job is. And it's quite interesting. You talked about a non-performing employee. I've also seen you come in, and I've seen this as a manager myself. I come in, I'm told that employee is not working, it's not really delivering. You might need to think about changing that person or find another one for that job. And if you start doing exactly the things we talked about right now, you'll see suddenly there's people that was like these hidden giants where they just unleash themselves because suddenly they get what they need. It could be very few things, new resources to do the job, or just being listened to and actually can see that you are taking action, and never promise something you cannot deliver on. And then suddenly things happens, and you see within 3 months, this employee that was potentially on their way out is now a top performer in the business.
You're exactly right. And I mentioned it earlier, the Pygmalion effect. There's also something called the Golem effect. And this has been studied widely. People listening can go Google this. But if you take a group of people and you tell them they're great and they're smart and they're special over and over again, they will perform like they're great, smart, and special. And if you tell them they're dumb or they're bad or they're lazy, they're going to get dumb, bad, and lazy. That's just part of the human condition. So with managers, you don't want to give false praise because that is inauthentic, but you want to thank people for their effort. You want to thank them for their commitment. You want to listen to them. And you're exactly right. I've had that exact situation dozens of times. And even in our business, their performance begins to slack. They're not being as productive. The best thing you can do is sit down and tell them the truth. You're not performing the way you used to. What's going on? What can we do to help you? Not you're bad, but this is the reality. And a lot of times people are grateful to hear the truth because people are afraid to tell you the truth. I mean, I've had blind spots in my life, and thankfully I had leaders that I say they undressed me because sometimes it's pretty harsh, but it was coming from a place of trust and love, and they wanted me to get better, and it worked, and it did help me get better. But it's painful in the moment. But that's, again, the foundation of trust is underlies all of that. And so what you were saying about the slow computer really resonated with me. We used to go on site when we would start an engagement, and we'd interview all the frontline employees, and it was a standard interview. So we did thousands of these. And we would always say, if I gave you a magic wand and you could fix one thing in this environment that would make you happier and make the team more productive, what would it be? And the things that they would tell us, things like, there's a printer in my workstation that doesn't work, and I can't get close enough to my keyboard, so I'm bending over all the time because it sticks out so far. And it didn't even work. And we tell the manager that, and they're like, what? We never heard that. I'm like, yeah, they didn't tell you. Let's go rip that thing out of there. Because it's exactly like you said, it's a quick win. It shows that you're listening. And those surveys always got I would encourage every manager in the world right now listening, go ask your employees that question, and then you'll find 50 things you can fix that cost nothing that will make them happy.
Yeah, I think what's really important, my experience is, but that's a brilliant question, because you're absolutely right. You get 3 or 4 things you can go and fix right away. And then every quarter, go and ask them again, because then there's other things that will show up. And thereby they can see that you actually want to make work.
Yes. And you don't rely on them to tell you. You go and give them the forum in which to tell.
Yeah, and then it becomes automatic. Maybe they come and say, "Well, the printer is not working. Should I send it to repair? Or should I buy a new one? I just wanted it okay." And then they say, "Yeah, please fix it." Yeah, because then they know that it's an investment you're willing to take, because the printer, the keyboard, like, it's just the tools that needs to do the job. And then they can start concentrating on selling, as we started in the beginning.
Exactly.
Because you can't.
Because their knee isn't banging into the printer anymore.
Exactly, and they're not frustrated about that. How do we actually take because there's lots of training around, yeah? There's lots of frontline training, there's lots of the delivery happening, either face-to-face or online. How do you actually make it stick? And what is it that you have learned and put into your model that really make this stick and make people continue doing it? It seems like people are continue doing this program year on year because they can feel they're getting better and better as a team.
Yeah, so we have a framework we derived from our consulting days, but essentially there's 3 things that motivate people. And if you can do all 3 of these things consistently and authentically, you're going to keep people engaged, and then they're open for development. One is reward, one is recognition, and one is accountability. Those 3 things, and you can't have 2 and not the other, because then it starts to get lopsided. So reward are your incentives. Make them attainable, make them lucrative, make them benefit to you as much as to them, and it wins. Recognition, if someone does something well, let everyone know they did it. Like a tip we give general managers is set a threshold where if they achieve this threshold, you're going to take them out for a 15-minute coffee before work. And the reward isn't the coffee. The reward is them going home and telling their family that they are going to be having coffee with the general manager. That's the reward. The 15 minutes is just nice. You're just building a culture there. But the reward is they get to go home and tell their spouse, I'm being recognized by the general manager tomorrow. That is powerful. That doesn't cost anything. And it could change that person's whole worldview, right? So that's recognition, authentic recognition. And accountability is visibility. So transparency is accountability. You can see how you're doing. You can see on the leaderboard, you're in 4th out of 7. That's not great. That you have some things to improve on. And then the key is when you have recognition that there's an opportunity to improve, give them the tools to improve, give them the access to the right training. And that's what makes it stick, because they're being rewarded, they're being recognized, but they're also being honest, and they know exactly where they stand. You hit those 3 things consistently, make it part of your leadership culture, you're going to be able to have a very high productive team.
And it's super interesting. I was thinking as you were saying that Ken Blanchard in the one with the 1 Minute Manager, I don't know if you ever read that, but he talks a lot about catching people when they do something right and praise them for that, not when they do something wrong all the time.
Correct. That's exactly right.
And I have definitely met managers and had a couple of those in my life where in hospitality where they actually almost have pointed out the mistakes I made, but never really caught me out when I did something right, because actually that's what you want to elevate in a way. And of course you need to stop things as business critical and so on.
Sure.
But actually leadership is actually catch people in doing things right. And then you start building culture. And that's those micro touch points that really builds the impact in the long term.
That's completely correct. And, a lot of these theories, we subscribe to them. We like Simon Sinek, Start With Why. We buy into all this stuff. But when you boil it down to the most practical possible application, you're a leader. You have people that you're responsible for them. You're responsible for their families. You have a huge sphere of influence you might not even realize. Do you want to spend your life being the person people fear, or do you want to spend your life being the person that people want to follow? And the difference is, as you say, focus on the positive, not the negative. Don't constantly nitpick. Don't micromanage people. There's nothing worse than being micromanaged. And if someone is doing something well, like for instance, if you're at a front desk and you're engaging your guests and you're using words that I wouldn't use, but they're not offensive, they're not inappropriate, they're just not the way I would say it. Why would I go up to you and say, you should really say it this way? What I should go up to you and say, you're doing a great job engaging your guests. Keep it up. Because if the guests are responding to you and it's positive, who am I to say that I have the perfect way to say it, right? Yeah. So you're exactly right. Find those moments, focus on the positive, just like with your kids. You don't do negative reinforcement to build character. You do positive reinforcement.
Yeah, and then we even forget that with our kids. I would say it's easy to sit here and say, but sometimes we forget because we we just want to change it. And if you think about your ability to lead, is really important in all aspects of life. And this is one of the key things I believe I've learned, and I'm still working on. You're never perfect, and sometimes you also say, "Oh, that's not the way to do it," and you think, "Oh, man, that was the wrong way to say it." Yeah, especially to your kids, so that doesn't work out really well. If we talk a bit about when we talked in the pre-call, we talked about something really interesting. We talked about the consistency of an experience from it starts to it ends in the service, and the importance of that from an impact on revenue and customer experience, and thereby revenue and then profit. And we talked a bit about many experience actually starts, and most of them starts really well. Some of them starts really bad, but most of them starts really well. But then it starts to fade off, yeah, and then it becomes a bit flat, and sometimes it's saved by a really good exit experience. And lots of people don't think about the importance of the consistency of that experience on the same level. It starts really high, go really a bit flat, and then it goes really high again. And that's typical a hotel, I would say, where you have a really good intro to the hotel. You come in, they're taken care of, and then they say goodbye in a nice way. Or actually, they say another better example is you have a really great experience when you checked in, but nobody talks with you the rest of the stay, and you leave your key card on the counter and you walk out, and that's it. And you can never remember anything from that hotel again.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, how do you manage that? That's actually my question. So how do you actually ensure that you're actually aware of that, and actually you build in the touch points, and you make people do that across the experience journey?
Yeah, I mean, you have to provide some fundamental training to everyone at the hotel. I mean, we do service trainings. We have a whole digital service training program as well for just general, think please and thank you training. And a lot of times the employees that are working in the common areas, that are working in housekeeper engineering, they have guest encounters and they don't realize they're missing an opportunity to wow. Someone is wandering around the property looking for something. Be proactive and engage them. You can be aware of what's going on around you, and you're going to be able to create a great moment for a guest where they're lost and you come to the rescue. Where you know exactly who in a hotel solves every type of problem. So you encounter a guest that's having an issue. You can't solve it. You're in housekeeping, but you know who to call. Just knowing who to call can save a guest a ton of hardship, because you could say, just wait one moment. I'm going to go to a house phone. I'm going to get you someone on the phone that could solve this problem for you. That doesn't mean you have to have special knowledge. It just means you got to know who to call. And the general manager has to set the culture to say, if a housekeeper calls and they're standing there with a guest, you have to jump all over that. Those little things could be transformative to the whole journey. But probably the better metaphor for what you're describing is a dining experience, because it encapsulates what you're saying. And I think that might have been what we were talking about.
Yeah, we might do that. Yeah.
That this happens to me constantly. It's a pet peeve, which is why we're investing so much in food and beverage. But you sit down at your table, you meet your server. It's great. Their energy's great. Everything's great. And then as the meal goes on, they disappear. You can't find them for 20 minutes in the middle of the meal. Your glass is empty, or your significant other's glaring at you to get them another drink. And you start to get frustrated, and it ends up diminishing the entire experience. So that's a microcosm of, how do you put a tent pole in the middle of the experience to make sure that service level stays high. And a lot of times it's just common sense. It's just be attentive, be aware. If you could just do those two things, you're going to have a much better chance of wowing a customer.
Yeah, and it's also, as customers comes in the door, I can remember as a manager, what I really struggled with was get people really to focusing on being there. And as soon as somebody comes in, give them the nod that you're there. Or even if you're not there, just tell them you will be there in seconds, or you'll be there in a couple of moments. You're just doing something else. It's enough to actually have a really good start. So it's also there. But I actually think you're absolutely right that I was actually at a restaurant 2 days ago, and that midpoint, we actually ended up in that situation where we would have probably spent one more round of drinks, but we didn't because that person it was. It's a great example of lost revenue. If that happens 10 times a night, you can do the math yourself in your business. And drinks in general are, I guess, for most people who run restaurants, hotels or not, there's about huge margins this as well. That's
right.
compared to the food.
That's the most common impact is that it happened to me recently. A whole round of drinks for 5 people was not purchased because the server did not come back. And by the time they came back, we just wanted to check and we left. That probably would have been $80 on that check that was just squandered for no reason. And that, I think it's happening more than 10 times a night. It's probably happening constantly. Yeah. And what you just said about the nod, there's another one of my pet peeves. If anyone out there owns a bar, please address this immediately. You walk up to a busy bar, you manage to squeeze into the bar. The bartenders do not look at you for like 5 minutes. And you don't know, are people skipping you? They're helping. Like the nod that I see you, I will be right there, calms everyone down. Now you can relax. You say, okay, I'm in the queue. They know I'm here. But when they refuse to look at you, you get your blood pressure going and it just diminishes the entire experience. And it doesn't cost anything to look over and say, I got you, I'll be right there. Yeah. So if you own a bar, please implement that immediately for all of your bartenders.
Yeah, it's a bit about like they're almost scared to get the eye contact because then they think they need to serve, but nobody has that expectation. And it's funny, I've had that conversation with people, but nobody has that expectation. They just want to be like any human being, want to be recognized. We want to be acknowledged. Yeah. What in the last, there's lots happened. We went through as an industry where the pandemic really shaked us up, and there's been lots of turmoil in the industry. But and you've been running your business, and you made significant change in that business over the pandemic, where you've gone fully digital. But what has been like your key learning the last 2 years, like as business evolves and it feels like the world is upside down and there's chaos everywhere? But what do you take out of this? Because there's only one way forward, and that's progress, yeah? And 1% every day, as I call it, no matter what kind of environment you're in, of the snowing or raining or whatever it is.
You just got to keep stepping.
You can keep stepping, but these steppings are the learnings, and that's why I'm asking you this question. So what is the key learning you're taking away?
Yeah, I think if we go back to the bottom of COVID, I would say the biggest learning there is that it's never as bad as you think it's going to be. As long as you surround yourself with good people and you care about each other, you can persevere just about anything. Yeah. And we did. We held our management team. I mean, our management team took 60% pay cuts and no one defected. They all stuck. And they're still here today. We still have the same management team. So you have the right culture, you have the right team, you can persevere anything. But I would also say from a hospitality perspective, it's far more resilient than I think anyone would have predicted. If you had scripted that scenario in a book before it happened, no one would have believed that it would have bounced back the way it did. That there wasn't some kind of giant banking crisis because of all the debt. And it really came back very strongly. Not to say some were not depressed assets and there was a lot of turmoil, but travel and hospitality is far more resilient, I think, than anyone would have thought of. It's still growing, which is incredible. And from inside a business, I think it is critical that you're constantly trying to find ways to make your people more efficient. I'm not someone who believes that technology should replace people. Yeah. I think it should empower people to do more. And that if you have that mindset, then things like AI are not scary, because what it means is I could double the size of my business with the same team. That makes them more profitable, more lucrative. We can pay them more. It doesn't mean I'm going to fire everyone. It means I'm going to enable that growth. And I think AI in the recent year, I know it's a huge buzzword, everyone's talking about it, but really it is probably the greatest enabler that we've ever seen, even maybe since the steam engine or the wheel. It can enable that much productivity. And if businesses embrace it and not, fear it and say, how can we make this help my people be more productive? You can grow with the same capital and be able to achieve things you weren't otherwise been able to achieve. So hospitality is resilient. Who you surround yourself with makes all the difference in a crisis. And don't fear technology as a replacement for people. look at it as an enabler.
Yeah, this is quite interesting as well when it comes to learning, and I think AI really plays a role here, because that's, if you can use AI to share knowledge quicker in your, especially in big organizations, but also small organizations, and you can actually get people to do their job faster, that's really where there's lots of growth in itself, or a lot of profitability in itself. We talked a lot about sales, but again, there's also, like, you improve capabilities and the speed of knowledge in my organization. That's from the 5 discipline of learning organizations. Actually, what you see is profitability increases because you get more out of the resource you already have, in a way.
Correct. Cool. I agree completely.
What is the thing right now in your team and that you're really excited about? What are you focusing on to the next 5 years? What is your 5-year plan?
5, that's pretty far out. 3, I would say, because I only say that because of the speed at which things are changing. But it is the inclusion of agentic AI. And how do we make it so that we are extracting what you just said, the exchange of knowledge, and I would just modify that, say the extraction of pattern. So insights that are derived from complex data, AI is very good at finding those insights, and those insights become highly actionable. So we're bringing agentic AI into our platform to give our customers managers that insight in real time, and also internally. So how do we recognize opportunities to wow a customer? How do we recognize when a customer might be in jeopardy or in danger for some reason? What are the data patterns, the data points that are pointing to that? AI is extremely good at doing that stuff. So what I think is we're going to be able to, as I said, I think we could double the size of our company without adding any employees by deploying agentic AI to the tasks that are most mundane and most repetitive and are not adding value to the customer, and take that burden off of our employees, including our customers' managers. Imagine if you're a manager at a front desk and every day you get a message that says, okay, Michael, put him next to Mary on the desk because she's really good at something. And just by putting him next to Mary, he improves. Doesn't take any effort. And those are the kind of insights that AI is making in real time available to people. So I would say that's what excites me the most, is expanding the capacity of people by automating the mundane and extracting meaningful insights from complex data that's very hard to get to manually.
Yeah, there's a huge shift in AI right now, where it's not just the search engine, but I think it's the pattern, the ability to analyze and find patterns within a data set. Yeah, that's relevant for your business. And actually, in episode 299, I had a conversation with Ben Dixon, who is the founder of a workforce management platform, and they have cracked that now. They've released, and it's really about finding the pattern in labor, and really understanding your labor model within your individual business, not the industry, but your individual
business. Yeah. And like your business yesterday. That's what's crazy to me is we have examples in food and beverage where in a shift, it can flag that someone's performance is diminishing in real time, and then the manager can go and ask them what's going on. That is unprecedented and impossible for a human to do. You'd have to be like pulling reports every minute of the day. This thing can just say, you can just say to it, if someone's performance drops by more than 10%, flag it. And it will just do that when it will be looking at all the data, and it'll pick it out and it'll say it. That is unprecedented power that if we learn to use it right, like you're that person in workforce management, if you find the niche application and you really go deep on it, it can make a profound difference.
Yeah, and then that's really where all the other stuff we talked about, the leadership capabilities, the ability to ask the right question in the right way and have the trust, really become critical, because suddenly you become much more effective leader, because you can prioritize what conversation I'm going to go and have today in my business. Because it's always, when you're a leader, you are managing performance either on an organization level, team level, and individual level. That's what you're doing all the time, and yourself.
You're the marionette master, and you're a marionette at the same time.
And if you can actually get the insights quicker, you can get to where you can solve the right problems. So 20% they give 80%. What is the one questions you would have liked me to ask you? I haven't asked you, and what would it be, and what would you answer it?
I think it would be, what is our outlook for food and beverage, and why do we find it to be a viable next step for our company? And my answer would be that, we work with about 2,500 hotels right now and growing month over month. And in those 2,500 hotels are over 7,000 restaurants and bars. So we think from a hospitality revenue standpoint, at front desk, we're kind of focused on RevPAR. But when you bring food and beverage in, you can now shift to TrevPAR. You look at total revenue per available room. And we're seeing that a lot of our biggest clients are shifting to TrevPAR focus. They're not just looking at rooms revenue and food and beverage separately. They're saying, what is the holistic view? And by being able to support the food and beverage operations as well as we do the front desk, we now are helping them across these two big pillars of TrevPAR impact. And we're very bullish on the fact that, I would say in my 25 years of professional leadership experience, I've never been part of a product that has shown more enthusiasm from our clients than food and beverage. Because to exactly what we were just talking about, everyone has those experiences. And if you have a way to address it at an individual server level and you've raised the level of their productivity and professionalism, could have a dramatic impact. So we're really excited about the food and beverage aspect of hospitality.
And I think there's huge opportunity because, again, lots of people in that space are talking about it's always about the next marketing and sales hack that's going to bring more revenue in. But actually, what about taking care of the revenue you already have? There's very little focus. That's my own experience and what I see. But actually investing in those leadership and frontline employee capabilities actually make your people sell more. And actually, I often talk about, just think about it as a business owner. You stop looking at your employees as employees, but actually look at them, how do I make them to business people? Because selling is a critical key in becoming a business person. And I will bet you they will stay longer with you, and it'll be significant longer because they get better at something. And they will also make much better results when you start to treat them as a business person instead of an employee. Because again,
that's right.
It comes back to the trust thing. And then, of course, you need systems and training and stuff put in there. And that's where it becomes 3D and real in a way. That's a process for how you make them business people. Instead of, it's not employee training. It's actually, I want to make this person a business person. And they will thrive at some things in that business training. That's the more than others. And some will be really good at selling, others really good at running the machine. Yeah.
Yep. And, when you think about a server, they're almost their own business unit within your business because they're alone generating that revenue and servicing those customers. And if you can get them to think of themselves as a business person, like you're saying, a business leader, then they're going to take more ownership over that. And one of the things that we're finding, we theorize this, but we know for a fact now that we have restaurants on our system, is if you take the bottom third of revenue per guest performers, so on a specific shift, let's say lunch in a restaurant, the bottom third of revenue per guest versus the top third is 50%.
Wow. Yeah.
So that could be $25 for every guest who walks in the door that server is costing you. Or if you want to take the positive view, they're making you at the top. So there is very significant revenue to be had by focusing on your people and recognizing that there is a difference in performance and that there is no explanation for it other than the performance of the server. So if you can train them, empower them, inspire them, they can produce 50% more revenue. That's crazy to know for a fact that is out there. And for the 7,000 restaurants in our current portfolio, that could be a significant amount of money, across all of that and to offer all of our customers. But they should be considered their own business unit because they are. They are a standalone business unit.
Yeah, and I think also there is a change in the workforce where actually you want almost to be perceived as more as a self-employed person, but you want the security of a job, of course, but actually going away from that industrial thinking about that they don't know what to do and you're micromanaging to actually give them space, because a business person, you also just would give the trust because I trust it. person, but you also would invest in them when you think about them as business people. And I know Singerman's in the US is really a good example of that, where they talk about how do we actually learn them to become business people. And one of the things they train them in is the P&L, and how do you improve the P&L from top to the bottom line. Yeah. And they have that thinking from Jack Stack, that wrote the book Great Game of Business, and this incredible book, which I've been talking about a lot on this show. And it actually starts with great leadership that takes care of the basic environment where the people is, and they build trust in principle. That's the first part of the book, how you do that. And then the P&L training comes in after that. Talking about books,
I mean, why couldn't a server have their own P&L? I mean, it just that simply, there's revenue, there's cost of goods, there's gross margin. I mean, you could do it. That's an interesting concept, because I don't think anyone has built out an employee level P&L software that allows people to see their contributions. Could be a good business model.
And often, actually, they don't hear about their contributions also before it's happened, very late. So it's also, what is the lead indicator and what's lack indicator? And it's quite interesting that often, you're not, again, coming back to pricing, and how can you actually, with AI, see things more in real time, that this person today has contributed with X profit to the business by their behavior. That's a very interesting thought. One more question before we end the interview. I would love to hear, is there like a favorite book you would say? Because I love books. Lots of people listening to the show love books. You would say that people should go and find and have a read, because you had a significant learning of reading that book, not just one time, but multiple times.
Yeah, there's, well, I'm going to say three, but one of them is self-serving. We have a book, our founder wrote a book called Frontline Profit Machine, which is actually very good. If you're a small business owner, it's very good. It's still out there. It's available. From my personal standpoint, there's two. One is called Selling with Noble Purpose. I'd have to look up the author's name right now, but she was a consultant for, I think, KPMG's Salesforce automation practice for like decades. And they were able to determine that in every company they worked with, the top sellers all had a fundamental, unique belief in what they were selling for personal reasons. And if you can foster that noble cause in your team, you will definitely be able to improve sales. And I think that's why a lot of time people will go from operations to sales and have a lot of success, because they have a foundational belief in the product. They're not just being told to go sell something. And then the other is Start With Why by Simon Sinek. I've read it multiple times. We used it to overhaul our culture when it came out. We used it to overhaul our marketing and sales approach. It just resonated with me so perfectly. And you could even lump Leaders Eat Last in with it, because I think it's a continuation of that. So those would be my big ones. If you're struggling to generate revenue or motivate your sales team, go read Selling with Noble Purpose. It's very powerful.
Yeah, I actually got it on my list to read from our last conversation. I can remember you mentioned that book. Where can people connect with you online, learn more about what you do and the impact you have? Where should we go?
So we have a website. It's www.frontlinepg, like performancegroup.com. Obviously, that's where we have a lot of our case studies and articles and things that we do. You can also find me on LinkedIn and Frontline Performance Group, but you can find me at G. Toffetti at LinkedIn. So you can just Google my name or go on LinkedIn. And the Frontline page on LinkedIn is also very good. We're constantly posting case studies and examples of success. Champion certifications, the champions are allowed to post to our page so that they get to tell the world that they're great, doing well. So that's fun. But those would be the two primary places, LinkedIn and our webpage.
Absolutely right. We'll put that in the show notes as well for the episode, so you can find them there. Thank you so much for coming and sending you and the team power and energy to go and make the frontline employees in hospitality even better over the next 3 years. Let's keep it at 3 years, so we can make our industry as great as it can be.
Agreed. And thank you very much for having me. It's been a great time.